Be flexible. I think there's a lot of ideas that get thrown out that someone who's a go-to-market strategist, you are always hesitant to put something out there and feel like it won't work. Let the innovator innovate. Let the company fail. It's okay. Be flexible because 99% of the time, they're not going to fail. And it's amazing to watch. And you don't want to be the person that stopped that innovation. So working within innovation, being flexible, being okay with creating, a pitch deck 4 or 5 times because something changed, be flexible because it's going to be worth it in the end.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study series. On this episode today, we have Sara Fogel, who is the Director of Product Marketing for Constellation. I'm excited to have you on the show. Welcome to the program, Sara.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So let's start with a quick little background, who you are, where you came from, and how you ended up with Constellation.
So I am like a generalist strategist in like the purest sense of the word. My background is like a hodgepodge of insights. I worked at a company where we did market research in a really unique way. We used social listening and just literally read posts from consumers about different topics of our customers to develop insights about how they could improve their product line or improve their communication. So really nimble and agile, but what I found to be really interesting because it was super unprompted, which made it really organic and maybe even a little unbiased, which is different than a typical focus group or survey. That led me into really traditional advertising or digital marketing at Ogilvy. I was working on the IBM account, doing both demand gen and brand advertising, got to work on some really interesting campaigns, learned a lot about tech and a lot about AI while I was there. Did a quick stint at Droga where I did what I would call comms planning boot camp, probably one of the coolest projects I've ever been on. Really intense amount of research and kind of comm strategy through, you name it, like persona planning and audience mapping and journeys and things like that. Incredible experience, short-lived, went back to Ogilvy pretty quickly and was running social for Ogilvy Health. So really helping pharmaceutical companies get a little more innovative and interesting with their content from a social perspective. That was a challenge, you can imagine, but an interesting one. I learned a lot. I think the biggest thing I learned is that what I'm good at is digesting complicated information and putting it into a way that people can understand and then making it interesting for them. Then I went to GoPuff, and at GoPuff, I was running the business insights team. So I was working with an old mentor of mine from that first market research firm I was mentioning. We were running business insights at GoPuff, helping the company be more data-driven, make decisions based on what their customers were saying, what the market was saying. And I ended up at GoPuff in the product organization, kind of doing the same thing, helping them make more data-informed decisions. And that's where I learned a lot about the pieces of the organization around like how to build a product, which was really interesting. And so after GoPuff, a friend of mine who runs Constellation called me. We had used to work together at Ogilvy. He was like, come help us here. And that's kind of how I ended up at Constellation, bounced from product management, where I really learned about the tech, over to more of the go-to-market side now. So helping them really translate what they're building from a tech perspective to the sales team, and then obviously to potential customers and beyond.
So what is some of the day-to-day stuff that you're taking care of now in the role that you're in?
Pick a day. No,
That's a tough
definitely
one.
changes. I would say pitch content, tech training content, making sure that we have the right materials so that people understand our technology. I would say like value propositioning, making sure that like we have a clear communication of like why you should use our product, why we're interesting. But then also working on the innovation side, taking what's being done from an R&D perspective and rolling it out to clients so that we can start to test the market and see sort of how it's performing, how people react to it. And kind of the company's really, really good at being nimble about that. So rolling something out that's kind of in testing and learning from that and iterating. And so that's super fun from a product management perspective, but from a go-to-market person perspective, it's incredibly stressful, but fun.
Yeah, I can't imagine just how much work is involved in doing the actual like product building part of this because in some cases like there are some tangible things, right? Like you get access to a network or you get a device, a very specific device. And those are easy things to understand. But in terms of like packaging and containing the intangible stuff, you mentioned that you're really good at taking these complex ideas and making them really simple. Could you talk to that a little bit in terms of like what your process looks like and how you define and kind of outline what those products look like?
Yeah, I'm a big digester of information, and that's true outside of work too, but
Yeah.
I like to sit with the experts, so our CTO, our head of data, the different engineers, and digest what they're building and digest what they're understanding. And then on the flip side, sit with the customers, or even just do my own research and understand what's happening in the market and try to find the synergies. Like, what words are they using that are similar? How do I translate one to the other? And looking for pithy ways, almost like I am not a copywriter, but like attempting to be a copywriter, um, to just make it interesting. So to turn, what our head of data said, which is this like 15-minute, brilliantly said, but very technical narrative, turning that into like 2 sentences on an email that we're sending to a prospect or a client or something like that. So it's just like pulling it down, funneling it through, and then brainstorming ways to make it sound really exciting and digestible, I guess.
Right. It I would liken it to the idea of like a cell phone. I don't know how all the gizmos and gadgets inside of it work, but I do know that using one affords me a lot of really cool opportunities or um, comforts, in terms of how I stay connected with people. And so communicating that in an effective way is important, or else the cell phone wouldn't be the cell phone as we know it today. So that's really cool, that that's something that you are focused on is taking that information, digesting it, and then kind of repackaging it in a very simple way. You mentioned earlier that one of the strategies that you deploy is social listening in one of the things that you were doing, and I'm really curious about how that plays a role in how you make those decisions in terms of communicating the products.
I would say not something that I'm using today to make those decisions, but I think
Okay.
what it really did to my advantage is that being one of my first roles like a decade ago is that it helped me understand how people talk and get more of a universal handle on communication and understanding people and building personas and um, kind of like aggregating data in a way that's really human. And so, I mean, social listening, it's funny, like we at Constellation, we actually leverage social listening to enhance data for our clients. It's a big offering that we use across anything from like sort of business intelligence to like inventory insights. And so it's not data that I'm using to inform my work, but it is data that's part of Constellation's sort of ecosystem of data that we use to service our clients.
Okay, that makes sense. Y- There's this push in the market and in all of these new technologies that we're leveraging, to remove the human from the process and automate things, uh, in a post-COVID world where I get a sense, and I'm sure maybe you could share a little bit more on this, but collectively there's a desire to be more human. What are you doing inside of Constellation to kind of reconcile that duality, that dichotomy that we're kind of facing collectively right now?
Yeah. I would say that everything that we're building is being used to empower humans. It's not being used to replace them, right? We're
Mm.
creating tech that makes their job more effective and efficient. But at the end of the day, especially because Constellation really services highly compliant industries. So at the end of the day, there always needs to be sort of like a human check on everything or a human hand on everything. And having AI and different pieces of technology to enhance that, it speeds the process up and it streamlines it, but it in no way replaces that human. And that's definitely not the goal of the company.
Okay, so that's really interesting that as a frame, this is more of a empowering the people to serve the people versus let's just get rid of this person and put a bot in its place, which I mean that can be quite contrasting, especially to the client base or to the people that we're like aiming to serve. When you are approaching the I'll call it a challenge of exploring these technologies. How do you stay consistent with that message or with that idea?
I think because we start with pain points, right? So we learn a lot about our clients, despite being a SaaS company, we're very hands-on, we're very good, close relationships with our clients, and we learn a lot about what their internal processes look like, what their pain points look like. And so our goal is never to replace our client, like they pay us. And so our goal is to help them move faster, do more. And so by understanding their pain points and their workflows and their needs, we can make decisions that fit into their workflow. I think that's probably my favorite part about Constellation. There's so many SaaS companies, marketing technologies, whatever you have out there that are like, use us without sort of the caveat of like, we will fit into what you already do. We're not going to change the way you work. We're not going to replace the way you work. We want to fit into what you're already doing. And that's kind of what makes us different. And I think how it makes it a little bit easier to say our AI solutions are not replacing you. They're fitting into what you're already doing and just helping you move faster and do more in a shorter amount of time.
The message of being consistent in who you are as a business, who you are aiming at serving, and then deploying the technologies that help do that gives you an opportunity to like explore freely without having to worry about how people are going to perceive that because that's kind of part of your mantra, it seems, is that we're constantly looking to innovate and continue to bring these things to you. Am I
Yeah,
right on that?
absolutely. And I think we don't think that there's a one size fits all solution for everybody. I think that's relatively unrealistic. I think there are companies out there, the bigger ones, who can do it, but it requires massive change management on the client side.
Hmm.
We're smaller and more nimble. And so when we work with our clients, like we're like, we could just tweak this or customize this or make it work for what you're already doing. And our CEO loves to say, like, our solution is 70% off the shelf, 30% customizable. From a client's perspective, that's super attractive because it's like, okay, I don't have to change everything. Maybe I change a couple things and then everything else fits in. And then from like our business perspective, it makes us stickier, right? Because
Yeah.
like we have customized it to your needs. So it's a great model. Our CEO is great about that kind of stuff. Our CTO, brilliant when it comes to that kind of thing. So yeah.
So, Sarah, in terms of the actual process of like acquiring a customer, can you kind of share a little bit about what that pathway looks like from the point of like discovering you and what you do to, onboarding and being a sticky client?
Yeah. It depends on the industry. So another key value of Constellation is we're completely verticalized. So we're heavily focused in the automotive industry, pharmaceutical, and then we're looking into emergencies and slowly getting into them like insurance. We have a pretty massive insurance client, finance and travel and tourism. And then we have some kind of more D2C luxury brands. From an automotive perspective, it's name recognition. We work with a lot of the major OEMs. We work with 1,000, 2,000 dealerships. And so we
Wow.
have name recognition in that industry and we get a lot of referrals because we have such close relationships with our clients. So in automotive, it's very organic. People know our CEO, Diana. Our sales team is heavily recognized in the industry. And so there's a lot of credibility built there. In pharma, we're slowly building that. So we've got a couple really great clients. Our head of pharma has a great name in the industry. Our lead salespeople has a really great name in the industry. We have a head of compliance who's worked with some of the biggest companies and really is helping us build relationships in the compliance space within pharma. So a lot of name recognition there. And then as we work with clients, we're already seeing pickup. We went to an event a year ago. I'm never going to remember what event it was. And one of our prospective clients, like we hadn't even signed a contract with them, brought us up on stage and like called us out. And we ended up getting a bunch of opportunities. We didn't even plan this from that. So a lot of our growth has been organic and has been on based on word of mouth and the fact that we just do good work and we like make our clients' lives better.
That's so powerful to have a reputation or to be able to build a reputation. And one actually the conversation I had just before this, we were talking about what makes you remarkable, what makes the work that you're doing um so talk aboutable, because that's what it takes, right? Is that you have to do something for somebody that is beyond what their expectations are, so much so that now they want or desire to talk about you and that experience. And I'm curious, is there anything that you can attribute to what that is, or is it just generally the way that you conduct business?
I don't want to cheapen it, but I would say the biggest thing is like the volume that we can produce. So a great example is we have a client who their agency wanted more content. They were like, we want to do more hyper targeted local campaigns. And the client was like, if we do that, we won't be able to do, our above the line kind of marketing. And so we work with them to enable mostly social in a hyper targeted local way. We produce 80,000 assets for them a month. And so, right,
Holy cow.
the scale that our platform can produce is pretty incredible. I don't want to say unmatched because there's so many technologies out there. So like maybe someone else could do it. I've never seen it. I've never seen anything like this. And so, and that's true. That's probably like the biggest use case we have. And then we have smaller use cases. So in pharma, I used to run, social for Ogilvy Health. We were producing like 7, 8, maybe 15 on a bigger client assets a quarter. We're able to produce about 50. I think our biggest client produces about 50 assets a quarter, which is a lot in pharma. But it then gives their agency a library of approved content that they can pull from. So being able to scale the volume of content, you're not necessarily going to launch all of it, but now you have access to it and you've like made everything more efficient. I think that use case is the one we've seen the most traction on as like, oh, you need to talk to Constellation. They're going to scale your marketing like you've never seen before.
Yeah, scale's massive, and it's a common thing that a lot of people are talking about right now in this small, medium business space, transitioning into, becoming a big business. I'm wondering what sort of challenges that poses if you have to do so much work. I'm sure there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of feedback loops that you have to manage. AI obviously is playing a role in some of that. What are some of the challenges that you guys have to face when it comes to executing on some of this stuff?
I would say it's all in the setup. So the heaviest lift that we do with the client is onboarding. It's getting everything into the platform. It's setting up templates. It's putting in place the rules that our content needs to always follow. Setting up, any data feeds or connecting to their DAM. It's really the setup that's the heavy lift and that first delivery and getting through that process. Once we do that, depending on the client, because it changes, it's kind of pushing a button every month, honestly. So I would say, the challenges that come in setup is that you never think of everything all at once. There's
Right.
always things that come up that you're like, oh, that's right. We did this one time and we had that learning. So as the product marketing lead, keeping track of those things and having sort of a running list, like my poor customer success and operations team, my onboarding documents keep getting bigger as I learn more and more. But you're always going to run into those moments of like, oh, shoot, we didn't think of this. So I would say that's the biggest challenge. But once we have a rhythm going with a client because of our technology, for the most part on a monthly basis, I would say if onboarding takes maybe a month, once we have that down, monthly delivery takes less than a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a pretty sophisticated system or process then, I imagine. I know, like,
Yes.
I think for my personally biggest client, I'm doing about 1,500 to 2,000 pieces of content a month. To hear 80K as like a standard is just mind-blowing how that's even possible. And incredible that you guys are capable of that level of work and delivery, and that's really exciting. I'm curious to know, what are some of the bigger goals now that you have for the future? What are you aiming at? Where are you headed? What's coming down the pipeline that you're excited about?
Yeah. I mean, not to sound like a cliche, but AI, like I think we've we've further along than started. We've made a lot of headway in understanding how to weave AI into our process. And I think we were very hesitant at first because we work with highly compliant industries. And so there's always hesitancy there of AI, right? Like, what's it going to produce? What's going to come out of it? I want it to be strict rules. And so we've looked into a lot of different ways to make it valuable. And so I'm really excited to start to implement that in different ways. Anything from generative image and copy, like imagine being able to like literally have it generate different ways of saying the same thing that you could test. I mean, obviously you can do that with like a chat GPT, but integrating it into our workflow so that you're not writing all of those on your own or anything like that. The other piece is the chat features. So a couple months ago, Moderna actually launched a massive partnership with OpenAI where they are using ChatGPT across their entire organization to fuel their organization. We want to do that through the process of our platform. We want you to be able to ask questions through the platform as you're going through the process to say, like, oh, how did this perform last year? Should I turn this template off? Or last month, should I turn this template off? Really being able to grab data from previous campaigns, from your inventory data, from your clinical trials to make more informed decisions as you use our tool to generate the content on a monthly basis. That's the vision that I think I'm most excited to see come to life.
Yeah, that's really exciting and really big to to hear that a company like Moderna and OpenAI have partnered. It's um that's an exciting opportunity because of what it means for the rest of the people down the line. When technology advances at the top, it slowly trickles down, and then the end user gets to benefit from that in a much bigger way. So that's very exciting. Um, in terms of uh, the direction that you guys are taking and where you're heading, are there any things that you're kind of like worried about that might be standing in the way of that progress?
Resources.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, we're a standard startup, or if you can call us a startup after 8 years, but um, we work quickly, we move quickly, we iterate a lot, and we take on a lot. We're not afraid to take on a lot. I think my favorite part about this company is the people. They all have the same mentality of like, we just want to succeed and do something amazing. And so there's a lot of like, yeah, we'll do it, we'll do it. So I think the resource game, it's real, right? It's always a challenge, but always seem to get it done. We put our clients first every day. And so we will never let the resources stop us from delivering for them. But being able to innovate at the rate that I know we all want to is always a challenge when it comes to resources.
Right. So, I mean, does that mean that you guys are or actively like searching to create partnerships, or are you doing this to kind of build everything internally? What kind of approach are you taking in that regard?
I think we're kind of open minded either way. You know, we'll start the process of trying to figure it out ourselves. And if an opportunity comes along where we see for a partnership, you know, we just built a phenomenal partnership with NBCU.
Hmm.
We are helping them do localized CTV for the automotive industry, which has never been done before, right? CTV is kind of equated with regular TV. You're doing it on a broad scale, which means that the local dealers can't advertise on CTV. They just use the running footage from the OEM. And we're going to help them make localized content. They're going to have their dealer name and their address and their specific offers and all of that in the ad on the Olympics, on live sports. So that was such a great partnership to help put our technology in a very specific place and connect it with a really powerful partner. So we're always open to partnerships like that.
Excellent. You've been very generous with your time and wisdom, and for that I'm very grateful. There's a lot of insights that you've offered this conversation, and um, I'm sure the people listening or whoever finds this, wherever they find it, are going to benefit from it. In closing, I'd love to get one last piece of advice from you. If somebody else was in a similar role as you, facing the challenges of kind of navigating, this new technology and the resources it takes to implement it and all that other stuff, what would that one piece of advice be for that person?
Be flexible. I think there's a lot of ideas that get thrown out that someone who's a go-to-market strategist, you are always hesitant to put something out there and feel like it won't work. Let the innovator innovate. Let the company fail. It's okay. Be flexible because 99% of the time, they're not going to fail. And it's amazing to watch. And you don't want to be the person that stopped that innovation. So, working within innovation, being flexible, being okay with creating, a pitch deck 4 or 5 times because something changed, be flexible because it's going to be worth it in the end.
That is so profound. I even in my own personal experience, as you are saying it, I'm looking back at all the times where the opportunity itself presented itself during that moment of me being flexible, being like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be rigid with this. Maybe I can adapt and keep evolving. And then, from there, success became uh, a little bit easier to come by. So instead of standing in the way of it, which I think a lot of people do, is get in their own way. So that's really, really sound advice. Sarah, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain further or perhaps work with you, how would one go about doing that?
Oh, hmm. What information do I want to give out?
Be
My
careful.
yeah,
'Cause
I
what you've
think
said is amazing, and I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening are going to want to work with you. So
I love that. Maybe my email. I'm honestly okay with a flooded inbox. I'm pretty good at managing it. So it's just my name, Sarah.Fogel at helloconstellation.com. Feel free to reach out.
beautiful. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes so people can find it easily. As for me and my team, if you want to get in touch with us, it's nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and I will see you in the next.